When she was just 10, she told a rich boy, "One day I'll be your wife." He laughed and walked away. But 18 years later, she returned, not as a servant's daughter, but as his billionaire bride. She stood barefoot in a rich man's garden. Blood ran down her knee. She held a melting popsicle in her hand. She looked up and said, "When I grow up, I'll marry you." He laughed. He was 15, rich, and sure of life. He thought things never worked that way. 18 years later, he became a CEO, and she walked into his company with a new name, a smart mind, and a promise she had never forgotten. Hello, family. Welcome to Kairo Tales. Please subscribe and like this video. It means so much to us. Thank you for your support. Now sit back and relax as we begin. The Miami sun covered Coral Gables in gold. Tall palm trees lined the streets. Big Spanish houses stood behind shiny gates. At the center was the Belmonte mansion. Everyone in the city knew the family name. Their house had white walls, arched windows, and red roofs. A marble fountain sang softly in the front yard. 15-year-old Peter Belmonte walked in the garden. He was barefoot, wearing fancy shorts. He tossed a football up and down. Summer felt boring and slow. His father was at meetings. His mother was inside preparing for a party. Peter had learned how to be alone. Then he saw someone under the rose vines. At first, he thought it was a maid. But as he moved closer, he saw a small girl. She was about 10. Her knees were hurt, and her hands were dirty. "Hey," Peter said softly. "Are you okay?" She looked up, surprised. Her eyes were shiny with tears. Dirt streaked across her cheek. She tried to stand, but pain stopped her. "I fell," she whispered. Peter knelt down beside her. "Don't move," he said. "You're bleeding." She didn't cry. Her hands closed tight. Peter tore a strip from his shirt and wrapped it around her knee. "It's not bad," he said gently. "Were you climbing the fence?" She shook her head. "I was playing. I didn't mean to come here. I'm waiting for my mom." "Who's your mom?" Peter asked. "Carmen," she said. "She works here, now." In the kitchen. Peter blinked. He remembered that name. Carmen was quiet, polite, and tired-looking. She never spoke much. "What's your name?" he asked. "Liana," the girl said. "Thank you for helping me." Peter smiled. "No big deal. Want a popsicle?" She nodded. He stood and offered his hand. She limped as they walked to the pool house. He opened the small fridge and found one. It was red. He handed it to her. Liana held it carefully like a prize. "I like your house," she said. "It looks like the ones in movies." Peter laughed. "It's okay, I guess. My mom says big houses are just boxes for rich people," she said. "But I think if you're kind, it doesn't matter if you're rich." Peter raised a brow. "Is that what you think?" She nodded and licked her popsicle. They sat under the umbrella in the shade. The breeze made the palm trees move. For a while, they didn't talk. Peter checked his phone. Liana watched the koi fish swim in the pond. Then she spoke suddenly. "When I grow up, I'll be your wife." Peter almost choked. He looked at her in shock. "My what?" he asked. "Your wife," she said again. "You helped me. You're kind. I like you." Peter laughed. "That's not how it works, kiddo." "It is," she said seriously. "My mom says, love starts when someone helps you. I'll remember this. One day, I'll marry you." Peter smiled. "You're funny." "I mean it," she said. "Even if you forget, I won't." A horn sounded from the driveway. Suppliers had arrived. Liana stood quickly. "I have to go. Mom doesn't like me talking too much." Peter smiled. "All right then, future wife. Try not to fall again." She didn't smile. She just said softly, I won't forget you." Then she walked away, barefoot and limping. Her curls bounced in the sunlight. Peter watched her go, still smiling. Something about her stayed with him longer than he thought. He didn't know that Liana had written him into her future. Miami was full of color and life, but to Liana, it was full of locked doors. At 11, she no longer played in gardens. Her mother made sure of that. "They live in another world," Carmen told her. "They are kind, but not for us. Don't mistake smiles for friendship." But Liana didn't believe it completely. Peter hadn't looked at her like a maid's daughter. He had looked at her like someone special. Years passed. Their small apartment in Little Havana was noisy. Traffic, music, and voices filled the air. The tiles were cracked, the paint peeled from the walls. But it was home. Carmen worked long hours in many houses. Liana learned to cook, clean, and study alone. When the power went out, she used candles to read. At school, she was quiet but smart. She never missed a test. She saw girls with nice shoes and new bags. She told herself, "I'm not less, I just start behind." At night, when her mother came home tired, Liana read stories aloud from library books. Her voice filled the small room with dreams. Peter Belmonte never left her thoughts. Not as love, but as hope, a light showing what could be possible. Peter's world was different. At 17, he followed his father, Richard Belmonte. He sat in meetings and fancy events. His father never asked what he wanted. Ambition wasn't a choice. It was a rule. He finished school and studied business at Georgetown. He worked at companies in New York and Brazil. While others partied, Peter studied blueprints and reports. Still, he felt something missing inside. The higher he climbed, the emptier life felt. Sometimes, he remembered a little girl with a popsicle, her voice saying, "I'll marry you one day." He never told anyone. It felt like a dream. When Liana turned 17, her mother got sick. It started with coughing, then pain. Doctors said it was stage 3, lung cancer. Carmen, who had cleaned rich houses for years, was now too weak. Liana worked after-school waitressing, tutoring, cleaning. She didn't cry in front of anyone. She took her exams between hospital visits. She applied to colleges using library computers. Florida International University gave her a full scholarship. She packed her bags as her mother began chemo. On weekends, she came home to take care of her. When her mother died, Liana cried for days, but she kept moving forward. She studied business management and real estate. She learned everything about Miami's skyline. She worked at small firms, then bigger ones. Her resume became strong, but one dream stayed to work at Belmonte and Sons. At 27, Peter lost his father to a stroke. The company became his to run. People doubted him at first, but he proved them wrong. He restructured the business, sold bad assets, and launched new projects. The Miami Herald called him the young real estate king. He had money, respect, and fame, but deep inside, he felt alone. At 28, Liana walked into Belmonte and Sons. The air was cool and heavy with power. People walked fast and spoke quietly. The marble floor shined under bright lights. Everything smelled of wood and polish. Liana looked perfect, a navy dress, nude heels, and a gold chain. It was her mother's necklace. Her hair was tied neatly in a bun. Her steps were calm, but her heart raced. This was the same company her mother once cleaned. The same family that once lived in her dreams. And the same boy who once gave her a popsicle and promised her a smile she never forgot. She whispered, "I told you I'd come back." She had used her mother's last name more. She hid every detail that linked her to the past. Not because she was ashamed, but because she wanted to earn this herself. The interview was hard, 3 full rounds. HR, a panel of managers, And finally, Sasha Hidalgo, the sharp senior director. Sasha was known for rejecting even Ivy League students. But Liana had something different: hunger and heart. She passed every round. By the end of July, she was hired. By mid-August, she wore her badge proudly. She walked into her first big meeting on the 32nd floor. The glass doors opened. Peter Belmonte walked in with quiet confidence. He didn't need to say a word. People straightened in their seats when he entered. His gray suit was perfect. His eyes calm and sharp. Older, sharper, colder, but still him. He greeted the room with a nod. Then he sat at the head of the table. "Let's keep this short," he said firmly. "We need zoning approvals by Friday. I want all property files on my desk by noon tomorrow." Sasha. The director stood and began her report. Liana listened closely, her face calm and focused. She took notes on her tablet, eyes on the screen. Only once did she look up. Peter's eyes moved across the table and met hers. For a heartbeat, the world went quiet. He smiled politely, the way a boss greets a new hire. She smiled back, soft but unreadable. He didn't recognize her. Not yet. But he would. For weeks, Liana worked harder than anyone. She came early. She stayed late. She learned faster than people expected. She solved problems before they grew. She never bragged, never rushed, never failed. People noticed her calm, her balance, her quiet strength. While others tried to be seen, Liana let her work speak for her. But she wanted more than success. She wanted to be near him. And she had a plan. She joined projects that touched the executive office. She helped with reports Sasha didn't have time for. She learned everyone's name, Peter's assistants, his VP's coffee order, the layout of his floor. Not to play games, but to quietly build her place in his world until he couldn't overlook her anymore. And soon, he didn't. That was Thursday night, past 7 p.m. Most of the office was dark. Liana was still at her desk, finishing a budget report. She finally saved her file, stretched her neck, and stepped into the elevator. Coffee in hand. The doors began to close, then opened again. Peter walked in. Alone. She straightened. "Mr. Belmonte." He smiled. More relaxed this time. "Working late? Trying to finish next week's site review." "Smart," he said, pressing the garage button. "You're Liana, right?" "More?" "Yes, sir." He looked at her again. Something flickered in his eyes. "Where were you before this?" he asked. "I worked at Ridgeview Realty." "And before that?" "Horizon Group. Mostly mid-scale projects. I wanted to learn from the best." A small smile appeared on his lips. "Well, you picked the right jungle to survive in." She smiled softly. "So, I've heard." The elevator dinged. They walked out together into the garage. His black Maserati waited near the exit. She walked toward the far stairwell where her old Corolla sat 5 levels up. He noticed. "You parked all the way up there? New hires don't get close spots," she said lightly. "I'll have someone fix that." She shook her head. "It's okay, sir. I don't mind walking." He looked at her. Curious, amused, impressed. Then nodded and got into his car. She watched the red taillights fade away. Phase 1. Noticed. Phase 2. Remembered. Phase 3. Wanted. She wasn't rushing. She had waited 18 years. She could wait a little longer. By fall, Liana was often called into high-level meetings. She stood out. Not loudly, but clearly. Peter began asking her for opinions directly. He noticed her calm voice, her sharp answers. No flirting, no games, just quiet connection. He started pausing when she spoke. Sometimes his eyes stayed on her a little too long. In a company full of loud ambition, Liana was quiet gravity. And slowly, Peter Belmonte began to orbit her. The annual corporate retreat wasn't for fun. It was power in disguise. 3 days in a luxury resort at the Florida Keys. Strategy, networking, and silent competition. Executives brought confidence like armor. Junior staff rehearsed their smiles. Managers measured who looked ready for the top. Liana packed carefully. No shiny dresses. No loud colors. Just calm, elegant silk blouses, linen pants, and one black dress that whispered strength, not need. She didn't come to impress everyone. She came to reach him. The island smelled of sea salt and success. White balconies glowed in the Sunday palms, swayed over wooden boardwalks. Liana checked into her room, dropped her bag, and went to the welcome reception. Executives were already there, champagne glasses glittering in the sunset. Peter stood near the edge of the deck, hands in his pockets, talking to a legal advisor. No tie. Shirt collar open. Calm, unreadable. She didn't go near him. Not yet. The first day was all business. Meetings, workshops, presentations. Liana's team spoke on urban redevelopment models. She led the session confident, clear, and precise. Peter sat in the back, arms crossed. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes never left her. After the session, he found her in the hallway. "You're too polished to be a junior," he said. "You've done this before." She smiled lightly. "I believe in being ready and underestimated." He laughed a deep, real sound. "That's dangerous," he said. "Only if you're not paying attention." For a long second, they just stood there. The air between them felt alive. Then he said, "Join us for dinner tonight. Executive table." She blinked. "Is that a request or a command, Mr. Belmonte?" He smiled. "An invitation." She paused. "Then I accept." Dinner was elegant and loud. Executives laughed too hard and drank too much. Peter watched Liana across the table. She didn't fight for attention. She didn't pretend to be humble either. She spoke when needed and listened when it mattered. When someone joked, she smiled softly, not too much. When asked a question, she answered with calm grace. Peter leaned closer. "You're making my VPs nervous," he murmured. "They can't tell if you're a threat or a mystery." "Why not both?" she said, sipping her wine. He smiled, a rare smile that people had missed seeing. That night, after the company bonfire, most people left for the bar or their rooms. Liana stayed by the beach, barefoot in the cool sand, watching the silver moon paint the waves. "Can't sleep?" came Peter's voice. She didn't turn around. He stopped beside her, hands in his pockets. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was deep. "Funny," he said quietly, looking at the water. "I feel like I've known you longer than a few months." Liana turned her face toward him. Half lit by the moon. "Maybe we've met before," she said. "Maybe," he replied. "But I don't forget faces." "You didn't really see mine back then," she whispered. He frowned slightly. "Back when?" She smiled faintly. "Nothing. Doesn't matter." Another pause. Then he said softly, "It's been a long time since I met someone who listens before they talk. I only speak when I have something to say." He looked at her. "And what do you see when you look at me?" She didn't answer right away. She stepped into the waves, let the water touch her feet, then turned back to him. "I see someone who was given everything," she said gently, "but still feels like he has to earn it." That struck him quietly, but deeply. He said nothing. She smiled, small and soft, then walked back toward the resort. He watched her go not as a man intrigued, but as a man shaken by something he couldn't explain. After the retreat, things changed. Peter showed up to more meetings. He asked more questions, mostly to her. He noticed her calm, her focus, her quiet power. Rumors started. People whispered when she passed by. But Liana didn't care. This wasn't about gossip. It was about purpose, a promise she came to remind him of. What she hadn't planned for was falling again. Miami's skyline glowed like diamonds at night. In Peter's penthouse, everything was still. The silence was his peace. Glass walls showed the city. He ruled the city that depended on him. He sat barefoot on the couch, a glass of scotch in his hand, and thought of her. Not just in memories. She was there in his thoughts, in his quiet. What began as curiosity became something heavier. Liana didn't chase him like others did. She didn't care about his money or fame. She didn't try to impress. She simply was. And around her, Peter felt human again. By winter, he stopped pretending. When she worked late, he stayed too. When she talked, he listened, like the world paused. He walked by her desk to ask pointless questions, just to hear her voice. When she was gone for a week, he missed her, like something inside him had gone quiet. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was need. After a company gala, they walked to her car. Night air smelled of rain and sea. "Liana," he said, stopping near the valet stand. She turned, calm, but alert. "Yes?" He hesitated, not from doubt, but from the weight of what he felt. "I don't know what this is," he said softly, "but I don't want to pretend it's not real." Her breath caught, but her voice was steady. "Then don't." And he didn't. He kissed her there, under the Miami sky, in a tuxedo and quiet heartbeat, with the city glowing behind them. For 3 months, they kept it private. Not secret, just theirs. Evenings at his penthouse, cooking, music, laughter, stillness. He learned how she liked her coffee. She learned that he hated small talk but loved jazz. They walked the design district on Sundays. They argued about books. They sat in silence that felt like home. In those moments, they fell completely. One night, he took her to dinner at the Four Seasons rooftop. The sunset painted the sky orange and gold. They talked like always about work, dreams, small things that felt big. He told her about a project he was nervous about. She teased him about how he checked his watch when he thought. They laughed. Then, as dessert ended, he stood slowly. He reached into his jacket. Her breath froze. "I've had many people plan moments for me," he said quietly, "but this one, I wanted to plan myself." He took out a small black box. Inside was a ring, simple, bright, timeless. A single diamond in silver light. Liana looked at the ring for a long time. Not because she was shocked, she already knew. It was just that the moment felt too big for her chest. Peter went down on one knee. Not to show off, but because he was in love. Deep, real love. "With you beside me, I'm better," he said. "Marry me, and make me someone who deserves you." She didn't cry. She didn't laugh. She simply nodded, eyes bright with tears, and whispered, "Yes." Their wedding took place on the Belmonte estate. The same garden where, 18 years earlier, a little girl had scraped her knee and told a teenage boy she would marry him someday. She remembered that day clearly. Now she stood in the bridal suite, soft ivory walls around her, lace fluttering in the air. Her dress was simple and timeless, off-shoulder satin, no glitter, no jewels, just clean lines and grace. Her curls were pinned into a soft bun, a gold pin from her mother tucked at the base. There were whispers, of course. The CEO's bride isn't from his world. She came from nothing. A maid's daughter. But Peter didn't care. The maid, he told everyone who dared to question him, "She's the one who reminds me what truly matters. She's the only thing in my life without a price tag." Victoria Belmonte. His mother, I've stood beside him before the ceremony. Her hands trembled as she fixed his boutonniere. She's strong, Victoria said softly, looking toward the garden where Liana waited. She saved me, Peter whispered back. His mother smiled, the kind of smile that belongs to a woman who has seen love, tested, and earned. Then hold on to her, she said. When Liana walked down the aisle, it wasn't just to meet the man she loved. It was to meet the promise she made at 10, the promise she never broke. The ceremony was quiet and full of light. Magnolias swayed, music floated through the garden. When they spoke their vows, Peter's voice trembled. The hills of Tuscany glowed like a painting. Golden vines, old villas, and tall cypress trees rose under a warm Italian sky. Peter and Liana had arrived 2 days earlier. They stayed in a centuries-old villa, far from the noise of Miami. No boardrooms, no press, just peace, stone, and love. The wedding had been a whirlwind. The news had spread everywhere. But here, in the heart of wine country, there were no cameras, no pressure, only time. Time to breathe, time to be husband and wife, and time for truth. That night, they walked through the vineyards hand in hand. The harvest moon hung low. A soft wind moved through the grapevines like a song. I used to dream of this, Peter said quietly. Not Tuscany itself, but this feeling. Peace. And someone beside me who wants me for me. Liana smiled faintly, looking down at the dirt path. You're quiet tonight, he said gently. She looked up, smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm thinking, she said. About what? About how long it takes for a story to come full circle. Peter stopped walking. What does that mean? She didn't answer right away. She reached into her shawl pocket and pulled out something small and worn. It was folded like it had been held for years. Peter took it carefully from her hand. It was an old photograph, a faded Polaroid. A little girl with curly hair sat on a bench, knees muddy, a red popsicle in her hand, smiling at someone out of frame. Peter stared, confused. Then memory rushed back, the roses, the sunlight, the laughter, a small voice saying, "When I grow up, I'll be your wife." He looked up, breath caught. Liana's eyes shimmered. "It was me," she said softly. "The maid's daughter, the girl in your garden." Peter stood frozen. Liana went on, voice calm and sure. "My mother was Carmen. She worked for your family when I was 10. I scraped my knee in your yard, and you gave me a popsicle. You laughed not to mock me, but because you didn't understand. But I meant it, Peter. Every word." He blinked, trying to take it all in. "You've known this whole time?" he asked. She nodded. "I changed my last name when I applied here. Not because I was ashamed. I just wanted to earn my place. I didn't want you to feel sorry or trapped. I wanted to be chosen, not remembered." Peter ran a hand through his hair. I don't even know what to say. I didn't plan to tell you like this," she whispered. "But I couldn't start our life with half a truth." Silence fell. Heavy, but honest. Peter took a step back, not in anger, but in quiet shock. He saw her, now truly saw her. Not just as the woman he loved, but as the little girl he once forgot. He remembered her eyes, her laugh, her fearless words. "You kept your promise," he said softly, voice shaking. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I was 10, she said. "I didn't have much, but I had that dream." Peter moved toward her slowly, like stepping toward something sacred. "And all this time, you said nothing. You just walked back into my life and waited. I didn't want your past," she said. "I wanted your heart." He reached for her hand. "You have it," he whispered. And just like that, everything made sense. The familiarity, the pull, the unspoken bond. He realized why she always felt like home. Later, back at their villa, they sat on the balcony under the stars. Peter held her hand tightly. "You're not just my future," he said softly. "You're my past. My story." She leaned on his shoulder. "I hope you don't feel tricked." He smiled. "No. I feel found." He turned to her. "You didn't chase me. You didn't plan this. You just lived your life and somehow found your way back. So, you're not mad?" she asked. He laughed gently. "Mad? I'm amazed." He kissed her forehead. "You made a promise as a little girl and you kept it." Liana smiled playfully. "Most people forget what they say when they're 10. Peter smirked. "Good thing I didn't." That night, they danced barefoot under the stars. No music, no crowd, just them. The wind moved through the vines, carrying not the past, but peace. 2 years later, the Belmont and Sons office had changed. A new name hung on one of the doors. Liana Belmonte, Vice President, Community Impact and Development. The city buzzed below. Construction plans spread across tables. But in that quiet conference room, something deeper was being built: hope. Liana had stepped into Peter's world and transformed it. She wasn't a trophy wife. She was a force. She created the Promise House Initiative, a nonprofit that gave education, jobs, and homes to girls from poor families. Girls like her. Girls who had watched wealth from behind mops and windows. Girls who needed someone to tell them, "You are allowed to want more." The new center stood in Little Havana, just blocks from her old apartment. It was in the same building where her mother once cleaned stairwells for cash. Now, her daughter owned it. On opening day, the street buzzed with people. A white ribbon stretched across the new glass building. A mural showed young girls holding books and blueprints. Peter, he stood beside her, proud and quiet. This was her moment. Liana stepped to the podium. Her voice was clear and warm. "I used to sit outside buildings like this," she said, "wondering what people inside had that I didn't." The answer wasn't money. It was opportunity. It was someone saying, "Come in." She paused, eyes bright. "My mother was a maid. She taught me to walk tall even when treated small. She said kindness is free, and dignity is earned." Liana smiled softly. "Today, I open these doors for her so every little girl with a promise has a place to keep it." The applause thundered. She cut the ribbon, looked at Peter, then up at the sky. That night, their home glowed in silver moonlight. Peter handed her a glass of wine. "You know," he said, "I've made billion-dollar deals. But watching you today," he stopped, smiling. "You're the most powerful person I've ever known." She leaned on him. "Not power," she whispered. "Purpose." He nodded. "Same thing when it's in the right hands." They sat quietly, letting the moment breathe. "Do you ever think," he asked, "how different things could have been? If you hadn't come back? If I hadn't looked up in that meeting?" She smiled. "I would have found you anyway." He chuckled. "You sound so sure." "I am," she said. "I meant what I said when I was 10. He looked at her with awe. "Neither did I," he said softly. Months later, they visited the old Belmonte estate. Victoria had moved to Coconut Grove. Peter had turned the mansion into a landmark. But the garden still bloomed. The same trellis, the same stone bench, the same spot where a dream began. They stood there hand in hand. "Do you remember your words?" he asked. Liana smiled. "I do." "Say them again." She looked at him, voice gentle. "When I grow up, I'll be your wife." Peter cupped her cheek. "And now?" She smiled through tears. "Now, I'm not just your wife. I'm everything I promised I'd become." The breeze moved through the roses. Peter kissed her right there where it all began. No crowd. No cameras. Just a man, a woman, and a promise that had traveled through time, through struggle and love, to arrive exactly where it was meant to be. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe for more beautiful stories.